first, the news out of Philly. 4 nights ago, Paul George had what was probably his best game of the season. Scored 32, had 9 threes and a win over the Bucks. And while his numbers overall are down, he is the Sixers' third leading scorer, but now he's going to be sidelined till late March.
The NBA landscape was thrown into chaos when Paul George, a 9-time All-Star and key piece of the Philadelphia 76ers, was hit with a 25-game suspension for violating the league's anti-drug policy, instantly turning what should have been a championship-focused season into a storm of controversy, questions, and debate. Just days removed from a dominant performance that reminded everyone of his elite two-way ability, George suddenly found himself at the center of a narrative that extended far beyond basketball. His explanation, that the violation stemmed from taking improper medication related to mental health treatment, added a layer of complexity that blurred the line between accountability and empathy. On one hand, it presented a humanizing perspective, highlighting the pressures athletes face and the growing importance of mental health in professional sports. On the other hand, it sparked skepticism, with fans and analysts questioning whether the framing was a genuine explanation or a strategic attempt to soften public backlash and protect his reputation. The situation quickly evolved into something bigger than George himself. It exposed long-standing concerns about how the NBA enforces its policies and whether those rules are applied consistently across all players. In theory, the league's testing system is designed to ensure fairness through random checks and strict guidelines. In practice, however, many believe that factors like star power, timing, and media attention can influence how violations are perceived and punished. George's case became a lightning rod for that debate, with some arguing that high-profile players are scrutinized differently, either protected by their status or targeted more heavily because of it. The result is a sense of uncertainty that challenges the credibility of the system itself, forcing fans to question whether enforcement is truly equal or subtly shaped by narrative and reputation. For the 76ers, the impact was immediate and multifaceted. Losing a player of George's caliber for nearly a third of the season disrupted chemistry, altered rotations, and placed additional pressure on the rest of the roster to step up in his absence. At the same time, the suspension created an unexpected financial ripple effect. With George sidelined and unpaid, the team gained temporary relief from luxury tax constraints, opening the door for potential trades or roster adjustments ahead of the deadline. In a league where business decisions are inseparable from on-court performance, what appeared to be a setback also became a strategic opportunity, illustrating how even negative events can reshape a franchise's trajectory in complex ways. Beyond team dynamics, the suspension also carried implications for George's personal legacy. In a career defined by consistency, resilience, and elite performance across multiple teams, missing significant time under these circumstances inevitably changes perception. Fair or not, moments like this tend to linger, influencing how players are remembered and discussed in comparison to their peers. Every accolade, every highlight, and every achievement becomes part of a broader narrative that now includes questions about judgment, responsibility, and adherence to league rules. For a player still competing at a high level, that shift in narrative can be just as impactful as the games missed. What makes this situation particularly significant is how it feeds into larger conversations already dominating the NBA, including debates about fairness, accountability, and even greatness. When one star faces consequences while others continue to perform at elite levels without controversy, it inevitably invites comparisons and speculation. Fans begin to connect dots, sometimes fairly, sometimes not, between performance, scrutiny, and reputation. In that sense, George's suspension didn't just affect his season. It amplified ongoing discussions about how the league operates behind the scenes and how those operations shape public perception. Ultimately, this incident highlights a fundamental tension within modern sports, the balance between human complexity and institutional rules. Players are not just athletes. They are individuals dealing with pressure, expectations, and personal challenges. At the same time, leagues rely on clear, consistent enforcement to maintain integrity and trust. When those two realities collide, as they have in this case, the result is a grey area that invites debate rather than resolution. George's suspension became more than a disciplinary action. It became a mirror reflecting the NBA's challenges in navigating fairness, transparency, and the evolving role of player narratives. And as the conversation continues, one question lingers above all. In a league driven by both performance and perception, can true consistency ever really exist? The controversy surrounding Paul George has grown far beyond a single suspension, evolving into a broader debate about how the National Basketball Association enforces its rules and whether true consistency actually exists. Performance spikes, media attention, and even a player's age can all influence how closely someone is scrutinized, turning what is supposed to be an objective system into something that often feels subjective. Fans and insiders alike have started to notice patterns. Some players are hit quickly and decisively for relatively minor infractions, while others seem to move through dominant stretches of their careers without facing the same level of examination. That perceived inconsistency fuels constant debate, dominates social media, and places growing pressure on the league to explain how its policies are applied. In George's case, the suspension didn't just raise questions about his individual decision-making. It opened the door to a much larger conversation about credibility, fairness, and the balance between entertainment and integrity. What should have been a clear-cut disciplinary action instead became a visible clash between expectation and reality, between the written rules and how those rules are experienced in practice. Situations like this force fans to confront an uncomfortable possibility: that enforcement may not always be equal, and that superstardom, timing, or narrative control can subtly shape outcomes. One high-profile case is often enough to expose cracks in the system, and Georgia's situation did exactly that, turning a personal setback into a league-wide discussion. Meanwhile, the Philadelphia 76ers continue pushing through the season, sitting competitively in the Eastern Conference and showing resilience despite the disruption. But even their on-court progress is now viewed through the lens of this controversy, as every game, roster move, and performance becomes part of a larger story about how the league operates behind the scenes. As scrutiny intensifies, future infractions won't just be judged by their direct impact. They'll be measured against this growing debate about fairness, accountability, and whether the NBA's enforcement system truly holds up under pressure. By speaking publicly, George unintentionally shifted the narrative from individual responsibility to structural fairness. His explanation, intended to provide context, instead became a lightning rod for deeper questions. How consistent are random tests? Does reputation offer protection? And what does fairness really mean in a league driven by money, legacy, and global entertainment? These questions don't have easy answers, but they highlight the tension at the heart of modern sports governance. Every performance spike, injury comeback, or off-season transformation now invites speculation, with analysts dissecting patterns and fans debating whether the playing field is truly level. The ripple effects extend even further, touching legacy conversations and comparisons across the league. When a veteran star faces punishment while still performing at an elite level, it inevitably brings attention to others, especially figures like LeBron James, whose longevity and sustained excellence continue to define an era. The contrast between different players' experiences with scrutiny only deepens the conversation, raising questions about who gets judged, how they're judged, and why. George's absence, therefore, isn't just a gap in the rotation. It's a spotlight on the league itself, exposing how perception, privilege, and narrative can influence outcomes as much as performance does. In the end, this situation underscores a fundamental truth about the NBA. Every incident carries weight beyond the box score. A suspension isn't just about missed games, it's about trust, transparency, and the stories that shape how fans understand the sport. George didn't just lose time on the court. He triggered a conversation the league can't ignore, one that forces everyone, from executives to players to fans, to grapple with a difficult question. In a system built on both competition and entertainment, is true fairness ever fully achievable?